A lot of y'all are concerned about growing as a community, and I love the idea of growing as a community. I mean, after all, the good book even says many hands make for light work. So, that's absolutely something that we love and we want to do, but there's a time and a place for it. And don't hate me, just hear me out, because I think the whole self-sufficiency thing and the whole community gardening thing can mend together as one. So before we get going here, let me just say this. This is my garden. I have 11 8x4 beds, and then I have a greenhouse. And we grow about 80% of our food. Our ultimate goal, when it's all said and done, is to be as self-sufficient as we possibly can off of our space. And to that note, we have just gotten germination on our rutabagas, so that's very good news. Now, there's all kinds of ways to look at this, and I mean, if you want to look at it as an emergency situation or just day to day, I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can approach this subject. And I love the idea of growing as a community. There's limited stuff that we can grow in our space. And if people truly work together as a community, then yes, you can grow all kinds of food, right? So for instance, this bed over here is my watermelon bed. Well, we don't have a lot of space for these long vining crops, and I don't mind them growing out of my bed, but if somebody else had a space that was bigger that could grow some watermelons, and then we, for instance, could trade our fall tomatoes for them, or we could plant a bed of okra instead of just 2 plants and give them the okra, then that would work out really good. And across the board, it goes for all kinds of things. We've got chickens, so we can eggs, and then our honey from our bees. We could do all kinds of stuff. Like, I know not everybody wants to have bees, and not everybody is able to have bees, for maybe you're allergic, maybe you just don't want them, something like that. So we are happy to provide that product, and we trade, we sell, we do all that stuff. But it's important to, I think, and this is just my personal opinion, is it's a core of it to be prepared to be self-sufficient as possible and not dependent on other people. And I mean, plainly put, you can't trust people. You never know how somebody's gonna act. And I'd love to put all my faith into somebody, but when it really and truly comes down to it, I think it's as important to have all that you can have. And I'm gonna give you a good example. Let's go into the emergency realm real quick. I'll try and talk about this as legally as possible. When I was a marine biologist, I was on a ship, and the ship almost sank. And the captain, in that time of emergency, sat in a corner and cried like a baby. And it was up to other people to fix and get home safely. I think I said that correctly. Yeah, there's certain things that I'm not supposed to say, but for the most part, that was the gist of the situation. And the whole thing is, in that moment, that person who was overly confident to begin with, which got us into the situation that we were in, ended up falling apart and not being able to fix the problem. And so if you take that and then you apply it to a garden, and then everything goes bad, right? You wake up and there's no power, and there's been no power for a month. People will act differently than right now when you and I are talking, and let's be straight up about it. And you almost fantasize about those situations occurring and imagine what would happen and what you can do, but you have to think about what are other people gonna do, not to mention yourself. Completely natural for somebody to revert into a hoarding tendency in a time like that. And that's something that we need to remember and just think about. I'm not saying everybody would do it, but I think it's a good thing to consider. If you were to build a community, we've got some people around us that garden, and we keep in touch with them, but we don't really community garden at all. My buddy just had a bunch of peaches, so we got some peaches, and we give them some honey, and you know, on down the line. So, you know, we do things like that, but for the most part, we try to keep it close to the hip and really hone in on being self-sufficient. But I think it's all about community, and there's a time and place for it. And in that moment in time when you need it, if somebody is willing and can step up and provide that assistance to you, meaning you can't grow something in your garden, something died, you know, you split the difference, something like that, then you're really gonna have an easier time in the future as long as people will stick to their guns and do what they say they're gonna do. So to sum it all up, for me, I will never focus on community. I will hope and pray that we can come together as a community, but I will always have my goal to be self-sustaining at 80%. And if I can give 10 to 20% to somebody else to make up the difference and vice versa, then great. But I need to focus on this because that's how I decide that it's going to be the best for me and my family. And that's what's really important. Goodbye.